Anyway. Okay, ladies, so we ready to be confused again tonight?
And I'm reading a real good book, by the way, when I get to the end of it, if you're interested. It's by Charles Swindoll on Joseph.
Oh, is it? He's got one too, huh?
What?
He's got one too on Joseph.
Yeah, but it's just kind of, it's like reading the Living Translation kind of like thing.
Oh.
It's interesting.
Okay, well, we're going to probably cover some things you might not have thought of or heard about again tonight. So I'll see if I can put you in complete bewilderment. So I wanted to start with this quote because I thought it was a good quote from James Boyce. He lived during the 1900s, ever so long ago. He was loved and hated, favored and abused, tempted and trusted, exalted and abased. Yet at no point in the 110-year life of Joseph did he ever seem to get his eyes off God or cease to trust him. Adversity did not harden his character. Prosperity did not ruin him. He was the same in private as in public. He was truly a great man. And we'll be seeing all that as we go through the life of Joseph, that he was abused or favored, tempted or trusted. Quite a contrast he experienced in his life. And it would be nice if we were thought that way of after we've died, that we held up through it all, through the good and the bad, that we remained faithful. But I know myself, I've already failed on occasions where I've not been. No, yeah, I'm sorry. I know I have this squeaky clean image, but you know, I know I'm really sweet all the time, and you would never think it. But anyway. I don't, my epitaph might be, I don't know, different.
You know, that's the beauty of God's word to me, is that when he chose the people to put in his word, to record them, he recorded everything.
Yes.
The good, the bad, and the ugly, so to speak. And how hard would it be if he'd only, just talked about the perfect people?
You wouldn't.
There weren't any, but I'm just saying, Enoch and Noah and some of those guys who kind of pulled it off for 350 years. You wouldn't feel like. You had anything to relate to. Yeah.
Okay. Here I am wondering if I did this to my phone, and I did not, so nobody could probably hear us. But anyway, sorry, people. Probably helps to have the volume up. Anyway, yeah, it helps to see stories like Moses, such a great man, great leader, did a lot of great stuff, but you saw his very human side. He was a human and he had his flaws. But we do see, at least like I talked about last week, Joseph, the story that's portrayed of him is that he was very faithful through every situation of his life, that he held up, that, he withstood all the different things that happened to him. So Joseph was a man who lived out his faith in every situation. And many of the characters of the Bible demonstrated some aspect of faith to us to learn from. So, for example, Enoch shows us the walk of faith. Noah shows us the perseverance of faith. Abraham shows us the obedience of faith. Isaac shows us the power of faith. I was going to wait. Jacob shows us the discipline of faith. And Joseph shows us the triumph of faith. I thought that was a nice summary list of the different characters, some of the different characters we read about in the Bible.
Needs some longer lines.
Oh, is it too short? Sorry about that.
Okay for your typing, but
I didn't think about, I don't know why I did that on. I usually try to add a few spaces, but sorry about that. So we're going to start right at the beginning finally. Well, you know, last week was the beginning, it was his birth. But the more of his adult life, let's say. So Genesis 37, 1 through 2 is where we're going to start tonight. Now Jacob dwelt in the land where his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. This is the history of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brothers, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to his father. So, okay, now we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about that a little bit tonight, and you might change your point of view.
Well, you know what? When I was a kid, that's what we would have done since somebody told on everything we did. We probably would have put them in the hole.
Because you might understand why he was what you would call a snitch. But snitch indicates it's a bad thing, right? You're putting a bad spin on what he's doing. But we'll get to that. So, huh? No, but I'm saying you're putting a bad light on Joseph.
I think that he should not have snitched on his brothers.
Okay, well, we'll go over that tonight, and we'll see what you think when it's over.
But you were the little sister, see, you don't appreciate that. If you'd been the older sister, you might have appreciated that snitching part.
Okay, but you have to think about, we'll get there. We'll see if
I'm teasing, right?
we'll see. You may not agree with me, but I kind of like my side of the story tonight.
You liked your book better?
Yeah.
Than our
We always
Yeah.
feel like our own opinions better than
Yeah.
theirs.
So you may or may not agree with me, but we'll see how it goes as we go through this. See if I can relay it correctly to you. So tonight we're laying a little background to understand why snitching may not be appropriate. Maybe I should have made this the snitch report. So verse 1, where we're starting, is contrast Jacob's living situation as compared to his father. What's the difference between Jacob and his father is Isaac? You see a difference? Jacob dwelt in the land where his father was a stranger. His father never really got settled in. Isaac never really settled into Canaan because it was the promised land given to Abraham, right? And Isaac was supposed to obviously settle there next because he was Abraham's son. He never settled down. He moved around just like his father did. They never owned any land. They never settled down. They even went to Egypt several times, both of them. So now here we have Jacob, who's going to be the head of the 12 tribes, right? And he's already had a bunch of kids at this point. And so he is now actually dwelling in the land where his father was considered a stranger. But the difference is Jacob owned one plot of land only at this point. He wasn't even totally settled yet either. Jacob bought one piece of land outside of Shechem, I believe it was. And I think that's in Genesis 33:19. You read where he bought just one piece of land to put his tent. At that point, that's all he had in the whole entire land of Canaan. But you think he would have conquered it by now. Whereas by contrast, do you know who his brother is? Who's Jacob's? Esau. Esau, if you read the chapter before this, chapter 36, it goes through the whole history of Jacob's family line, Esau's family line. And they had conquered Mount Seir. They actually took over their area. And they had chief after chief, king after king. They were quite established. So his brother's actually, in one sense, looks like he's physically doing better than Jacob, who's supposed to be the one that's supposed to get the whole land of Canaan. But the difference between the two, Jacob has God's blessings on him. Much better place to be. He may not have all the land. He may not have all the kings established like his brother Esau at this point in life. But he's got God's blessings, which is a far better place to be. So this verse 2 tells you, says this is the history of Jacob. Now Moses, he broke down Genesis, when you read it, if you go through it, there's divisions. There's 9 divisions in Genesis. And each one kind of starts like this. This is the start of a new division. And he always tells you who the main character is Jacob. This is going to be actually the descendants. This whole next 14 chapters are the descendants, and mostly Joseph, the accounting of Jacob's family. It's about his family line. And as when Moses did this, as he broke down each character's family line in the 9 divisions, each one got narrowed down, and it was leading to the Messiah. Each family line was pointing to the Messiah, is what Moses was doing. And because, you could talk about all of Adam's kids, let's say, is in the first division. But who do they focus in on as they get mostly Seth and then his kids? That's the way the focus goes. So this one is Jacob's family line is what we're starting out. And the main kid that's going to be talked about is Joseph. And that's where we start, is with Joseph. And
is Joseph division what? Jacob division 1 or 2?
Jacob is the 9th division of the book of Genesis.
Oh, okay.
He's the final division of how Genesis was broken down by Moses. So King James may have put his chapters on it and his verses on it, but Moses broke it down by family line. He had the divisions of the families, and each family is leading to the Messiah. So now here we're at Joseph, and that's going to be the main focus. I mean, you'll see the other brothers in these 14 chapters, but the main focus is on Joseph. He's the emphasis for about 14 chapters, on and off through that. So that was kind of interesting. I never really caught that, when I was reading Genesis before, how Moses had broken that down. So in verse 2, we're going to learn some important things about Joseph. So there's some things like we were talking about that maybe are slightly inaccurate teachings that we've all kind of learned about all these years about Joseph, especially in this first story. That maybe if we think about some background, maybe we would understand it better or see it a little different way. So we're going to look at the first fact that we know about Joseph. What was it? Joseph, he was 17 years old. Now what's interesting about that is Moses, through the book of Genesis, didn't emphasize anybody's age. Why Joseph? Why 17? Why do we need to know that? He just didn't talk about it. So this is where you got to learn that everything in the Bible is important. These little details, it looks insignificant. 17 looks, what's the big deal about 17? But even that little detail is important. There's a reason it's in the Bible. So when you read the Bible, every detail is important. Studying brings out the meaning. So that's what we're kind of working on tonight, just with these first 2 verses. Reading the Bible or a devotional is good, but studying's even better. Better to study. So we're going to learn tonight and next time why this number 17 is so important. Why is his age 17 so important? And we're going to touch on one point tonight, I think, and one point next time, because we didn't get that far tonight. But anyway. So now, what's the next point we find in... Oops, too far. What's another fact we see about Joseph? Joseph, being 17 years old, was... He's a shepherd. Good job. I need to find a different way to do this. Joseph was a shepherd. And this is where studying is really going to be important. What do you know about shepherds? What?
You told us.
We know a lot about shepherds.
You learned a lot about shepherds last time. Now think about it. Shepherds are really hard working. He's not any different than his brothers. He is literally a shepherd, right? He's just as hardworking as the others. But what have you been taught most of the time when you read this first story about Joseph?
He was favored. He was daddy's.
Little boy.
He was favored.
He was favored. He was the youngest
Son of his old age.
son of his old age. He was spoiled. He was daddy's little spoiled one. He gave him a special coat, you know, and then he was a tattletale. That's kind of the way we've all been taught this, but with the background, that's where your opinion might change a little bit. One, he was a shepherd. He was no different than his brothers. Shepherds had a hard job, huh?
So he got that coat.
No. No.
She thinks she's gonna change her mind.
And if I don't, that's okay. My mind has changed.
The coat indicated not working as a shepherd.
No. Not.
Sleeves, long skirt.
He still was working. Okay, now look. In my translation, in New King James, it says was feeding the flock with his brothers, right? But well, actually, let me go back a little bit. Actually, well, okay, let me go ahead. Sorry, he was feeding the flock with his brothers. But when you look at this in the Hebrew language, the original text, it really means was a shepherd over the flock. He was the head shepherd. He's 17 and he's over his brothers. He's been placed in a position over them. Now you might think, why would Jacob do that? He's 17. He's got lots of brothers that are a lot older than him, that are ahead of him, right? So why did he do that? Would Jacob do that just because he loved him so much? Would he, who was so wise and cunning with his father-in-law and with his outwitting his brother, and he was obviously good at making money and building up flocks and herds all on his own, would he just throw his young 17-year-old out there to risk losing his flocks? Do you get what I'm saying? When you're a smart businessman, go ahead.
I'm thinking he was probably the most responsible one.
There you go.
Because of what the brothers did. They're out there going, let's throw them in a bed. Let's do that.
But that hadn't happened yet.
Oh, no, I know. But the dad would know which one were the rowdy ones that don't get anything done and which ones were the ones who could.
Exactly.
I was thinking because he favored him because he was the first son of Rachel.
Yeah, you would think that on the
He loved the most.
you would think that on the surface, and I'm sure that had a big bearing in it. He was the son of his old age, and he really loved Rachel, and it was her first kid. So maybe that played a part into it. But let's think about Jacob. This is where you got to go back a little bit in his storyline. Jacob, most of his life at this point, was a conniver. He was smart. He was a good businessman, good shepherd. He worked hard. He was a shepherd. He worked very hard. It says in the Bible he slept, that had no sleep, out there in the frost. The scripture says that. He gave up night's sleep, taking care of the sheep for his father-in-law. But he was a little devious, a little deceptive.
I understood that because he had God's blessing. And he tricked his brother, he tricked his dad.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Right. From day one he was.
favored.
But do you know why? Maybe that's because God knows everyone's heart and where they'll be.
Yeah.
God has foreknowledge and sees the potential in all of us. Right? He knows where we can go. We all have our problems, but God works with us and he knows what we're capable of and where we're going to go in life. So he probably knew Jacob, where Jacob's heart really was, but just had to get him to that place. He works with all of us, trying to bring us along to that place where we're going to be following him and loving him and serving him and being faithful to him. So when you watch Jacob, he's led a pretty bad life in the sense of morals. You know, you don't go around deceiving everybody and making your own profits, and you steal the birthright from your brother. I mean, I would have never thought of doing that, but that was him. He was a bit of a conniver. So what happens to him along the way? He gets 4 wives along the way, has 10 kids at that point, and at that point he decides it's time to break with Laban, his father-in-law, and he runs off with his wives and his kids, and Laban chases him down and says, where are you going with my family? And blah, blah, blah. And they come to peace agreement with each other, and Jacob goes on his way. He has Joseph about that time. So Joseph's a baby. Yes, he's a baby. Joseph, his brothers have been raised with a not very moral father, not a very godly father, one who is doing his own thing to make his own way in life. You see how the kids turn out as they're moving along. The four brothers, the four oldest brothers, Reuben, Simon, Judah, and Levi, destroy a entire town, kill all the men because of the violation to their sister Dinah.
What's wrong with that?
Jacob said it was wrong. They destroyed a whole town. They killed all those men. It was very violent.
I know. He didn't give him permission to do that?
Nope. He was mad at them when they came back.
He should have stood up and said something about it, though, and he didn't.
He told them.
He was lazy. He should have stood up for his daughter himself.
That wasn't the way to handle it, what they did. They were violent.
That sounded pretty good to me.
To wipe out a whole town of men, that's murder of a lot of people. It wasn't acceptable. Then you read about Reuben going to sleep with his half-brother's mom, one of Jacob's wives, because she apparently must have been a younger one, and so that was unacceptable. So all these older kids are not behaving very well at all. Then you get to the next set of brothers, the next four or whatever, that are with Joseph in the field. They're working the sheep. Look how they treated him. They didn't.
Only 4?
I was trying to count how many kids. It's 4 or 6. I'd have to go back and count. They're the maid's kids. These are the maid's kids. These aren't Leah's kids. These are the next set of kids born to all the maids. Those are the ones who were with Joseph. Okay? They obviously aren't behaving correctly either. There's something wrong with the way they've been brought. You also watch, you read a story in there about the wives are fighting over Jacob all the time. Both want him to be, they both want to be number one wife, which is understandable. They even draw Reuben into it. Give me your mandrakes so I can go sleep with your dad. Can you imagine being drug into that as a young man? Your moms are fighting over your dad. It's not a good environment.
I'm reading about him, though, it also said he was not an active dad. He should have, David made the same mistake.
Right.
They did not discipline their children, their sons, like they should have.
Right.
So he allowed some of that.
Well, kids will be kids. You can raise your kids right, and they do what they want too. It can go both ways. Yeah, they have their own will and they make their own decisions. But whatever the case, it seems like the first 10 kids are not behaving well at all. They've either learned from Jacob, they've grown up in a bad environment. What happens along the way when they leave Laban and they're heading back to their home territory of Canaan? Do you remember what happened to Jacob? He wrestled with God. He came to terms with God. What happened? What did God do as a result of that whole evening of fighting? He renamed him Israel because of the new character, the new man. So he now is going to be Israel. His life has changed once he's wrestled with God. Something changes in Jacob. Now Joseph is a little boy or baby, whatever, he's very little when this change in Jacob takes place. So Jacob has probably gained a more godly perspective and is changing his ways as a result. So Joseph theoretically here is being raised by a better Jacob, one that's more godly focused, right? Okay. So as a result, how do you think Joseph might be as a person? Might be more disciplined. He might be more godly focused as well. Huh? More responsible. More honest. Because his father was much more deceptive, right? Before he wrestled with God. So I'm thinking, and that's what the other commenters, I kind of agree that he was raised better. He was raised by someone who's come closer to God, and so he's going to raise Joseph to be that way. Joseph must have gotten something out because he wouldn't have been put in charge of a shepherd, as a head shepherd over his brothers.
And he was not participating with the oldest, as in the first two verses. He was looking and talking about what they were doing, and he was not into the things that they were doing.
Right. Okay, you're right. Yeah, because he gave a bad report. He gave a bad report, right? Okay, and we'll get to that. The other thing I was going to mention, just as a sideline, you notice, like we said, these are the maid's brothers in this instance, this particular storyline at the beginning of it. Where are the older brothers? They say they were probably out with the cattle. They were the older brothers and more experienced, so cattle are harder to take care of. So the older boys were in charge of the cattle herds. The younger boys are put in charge of the shepherds because they're less experienced. So I thought that was interesting. I had never heard that. Who knows if that's 100% true, but it's an interesting theory or side thought on that. Okay, so here is Joseph, 17, put in charge over 4 of his older brothers.
Oh, where's this? I miss
Yeah, me too. You see the line
the
of,
line.
Did I?
Foreshadowing.
Joseph is foreshadowing Jesus as
John 10:10.
Really?
No, I'm way lost. They're back to me.
What line am I missing?
In this verse, Joseph foreshadows Jesus in John 10:10.
Oh, wow. So sorry.
The shepherd over the flock.
Yeah,
Between the shepherd
I
over the
lost
flock and
I lost a slide. There you go. Okay. So that one, yes, you're right. I see. Yeah, I'm missing a slide. I'm sorry.
Tell us the word.
It's Good Shepherd.
Okay.
That was kind of one you could figure out probably without my slide, huh?
I'm sorry, I just wanted to be told.
And,
It's
and
capital though.
I made it capital.
I know.
That's me.
Sorry.
And so we're just getting a glimpse of him being a shepherd. And as you go through this whole thing, you're going to see more and more why he's a good a good shepherd, like Jesus is the good shepherd, why this is considered a foreshadowing of Jesus and being the good shepherd. So, I mean, some of these things are just intro statements, and as we move through things, we'll expand upon them more. But, it's just opening. So here is, Joseph 17, but put in charge over his four older brothers. So did you get that?
No,
Okay.
because.
We were looking for the good shepherd.
Okay.
And I'm talking out of order anyway, because I'm just winging it. I'm not even reading my notes.
Sounds good.
It's all the same stuff, but I've got it a little bit. I've got it a little bit out of order, but anyway, it's okay. So, anyway, here we go. So, Joseph was raised by the new, more spiritually minded or God-focused Israel, which is what I was already talking about. And Joseph's upbringing was different or better than his older brothers. And even if you think about that whole point of him being the love lavished upon him, given the special coat, do you think that might make for a better kid compared to what he probably treated his other boys? He was so busy shepherding for his father-in-law that that's what he was doing all the time, day and night. that maybe even the love towards Joseph could have affected him in a different way. So this reminds us of the verse, Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. So if some of you have trouble with kids that maybe you raised them one way and they've gone another way, have faith. Maybe God will bring them back to what they learned when they were little, that they'll come back to it. You know, that there's hope, that what you implanted was important, and God can use it, because that upbringing was important. It's really important. I mean, David is a big lesson. Jacob's a big lesson on how you treat your kids. How do they turn out? You know, if we treat them poorly and don't give them godly influence, don't do things right, are they going to turn out right? But the ultimate decision always lays with them, no matter what we do. But our influence can have an effect. So what did we read happens in verse 2? What's it say in red?
Just
To his father. So this is what we're talking about. Those boys were not, he's the head shepherd. He's young, granted he's young, but he apparently had a head on his shoulders. That's what the commentators think, that he wouldn't have been put in as head shepherd if he didn't have a head on his shoulders. He's dealing with his older brothers by another mom who are misbehaving out there. They're not doing their job right. Maybe they're misrepresenting the family. Who knows what they're doing? Something's not right. So he brings a bad report to them, to his father. So we tend to look at this as, oh, he's snitching on his brothers. He's just being a spoiled brat. He's snitching. But that's not true. If you know people are doing bad, maybe they're going to cost the death of some of the sheep because they're not tending to the sheep. Maybe they're going in town drinking at night, not tending to the sheep. They're doing something wrong that he does not think is appropriate. What should he do? Should he leave it alone because they are his older brothers? Well,
Finally apologize.
Nobody likes
Well, it's
responsible brother or sister.
that's the problem. It's like, and maybe they were ridiculing him to death because, oh, you're goody two shoes. I've had that put at me before. You're just too good. You're just, you brat. You're just too nice, or I've been called a Jesus freak.
Yay.
I know. I said, good. I did. I told them, it was at a college setting. I said, good. So what? I'm a Jesus freak. I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
Go get a life. Yeah, this was in the college cafeteria. I just had to set them straight. But anyway, you may be standing an upright life, and your brothers, your family, whoever don't like it. Do you kiss up to them and just let them go about what they're doing that's wrong, or do you? It's Dad's money. It's Dad's flock. Dad wants them taken care of. So whatever was going wrong, Joseph went to tell Dad. Because Dad has more authority. Dad might be able to say, boys, better get it together, or you're going to be tending the cow poop.
The pigs.
The pigs. Whatever.
Worried those boys.
You're going to be scraping out the stalls from here on out. Who knows what he's going to tell him? He's Dad. He has more authority. They have to listen to him or they're out, inheritance-wise or whatever. So there's another way to look at this. He's outnumbered by them. Look at what they attempt to do to him later, because we know the story. We'll just kill him. He might know what they're like. Who knows what they were saying to him? They could have been threatening his life right then when he went to make the report. We don't know. We weren't there.
He wasn't too smart of him to share his dreams with him.
This didn't happen yet.
I know, but when he does
That later.
what in the world was he thinking?
Well, we'll get into that when we get there. So this reminds us of, Jesus as well. Joseph is not abiding their evil ways. Whatever they are, whatever they're doing, he knows it's wrong. So Joseph is opposing their evil ways, a foreshadow of how Jesus would oppose evil ways. There's a lot of pressure these days. You know, don't tell on so and so. You know, because you're gonna look bad. You know, telling on them.
You know, Jesus had to oppose the church people.
Oh, you mean this verse? Yeah, this is why, you know, it's an example. Matthew 21, 12 through 13. Yep. Then Jesus went into the temple of God and drove out all those who bought and sold in the temple, and overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. And he said to them, "It is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves." Jesus was straightforward with them, and that's not the only time we read about Jesus being straightforward. He didn't abide with the evil ways. They're wrong, they're wrong. He was honest. He did what he needed to do. That's the same thing Joseph's doing. And as we go through Joseph's story, that's not going to be the only time he's not going to abide with evil ways. He's going to say no. That's a good thing. It's hard for us. We're facing this in our society. There's lots of bad things going on. We need to stand up. Stand up for what's right. Not abide by evil ways. But over the last, 50 years or so, we've been be love, be grace. And yes, that's true, but not to the point where we're put under the table compromising. Yeah, you can't.
Compromised our ministers' jobs. Anybody, no matter what their background, can lead a church.
Yeah, that's happened.
I mean, we've compromised our membership. I have a problem rate with our marriages as the world does. I mean,
I think they say the percentage is higher nowadays.
yeah.
I'm not sure if that still stands,
You know,
but
we've been compromised. It's kind of, I don't know. I think I always liken Satan to a 2-year-old. You know, he only has one thing in mind, and that's whatever's over there. He's not distracted. His goal is to bring you down and to defile you, the church, the people, whoever they are.
right.
He has nothing distracting him. You can be distracted. He'll never be distracted.
Right, he's busy. He keeps up with his tasks. Yeah. So anyway, I look at this different. You know, looking at the history of the family, I just see it a little differently. I think all these years, it's just always been taught he was a tattletale, in kind of that negative sense. But really, it was a good thing he was doing. He was protecting his father's interests.
And I think pointing out the change in
Jacob's
yeah. relationship with God is important too, because sometimes as a younger parent, you're not as, I was, but because I've been raised that way, but, you know, as you grow as a parent, you do change some of your ways of dealing with things.
Right. And even when you become a grandparent.
I was gonna say, usually it's more lax though.
Yeah, it can be more lax, but maybe you're also more patient sometimes than when you're a younger parent. Than when you're a grandparent, you tend to give a little more leeway.
My son, who's the oldest, used to tell his sisters, "I got one before she got tired."
That happens too. So, once again, I'm sorry. I only made it through 2 verses. Was not my intention, but I just saw so much background stuff that made it seem so different to me, and I just didn't really want to I didn't want to step into the next segment because there's a lot inside of the whole next segment. So I wanted to just quit there at this. So next week, we're going to find out what happens when he reports to Dad, which you know the story, but we're also going to find out another reason why the age of 17 is important. So it's a cliffhanger, an accidental cliffhanger. All right, so who would like to close us in prayer? Would anybody like to close us in prayer? Okay.
Precious Heavenly Father, we come to you with such grateful hearts for your word, for the freedom to study your word, for your Holy Spirit to speak to our hearts and make it your principles ours. Just thankful, Father, that you recorded human beings and not just perfect people, so that we can realize that when we stumble and when we fall, you know
know what we're doing, and you're there to help us pick us back up. We just pray for our precious friend that's having to move, and to make her move smooth, and you'll love her and her little family, be with that precious little girl that she'll be able to adjust to her new school and things. And we'll just, I'm just praying that you get our loved ones with this cancer that seems just to be spreading to so many people. Just pray that you will just be with them. When they're fighting for the first responders. And be with us that we'll just love you more and serve you better. In Jesus' precious name.
Amen. Thank you.